Welcome to the comprehensive news analysis. So on 8th, sorry, today on 9th of June 2020, we are going to pick up the Indian Express of the Delhi edition. Few articles relevant for UPSC, CSE examination. First, Lieutenant Governor strikes down Delhi order denying beds to non-residents, lifts curbs on testing too. Now, this case arises reminds us of the situation where there is scuffle between the Lieutenant Governor versus Delhi government. That is right to health versus resident priority, which is given to a particular residents of a state or a city. So you must understand that is it right to interfere with respect to the right to health of a citizen? No, because under Article 21, right to life, right to health is guaranteed. It is an integral part which is granted to every citizen, irrespective of their residentship, of their citizenship. But here, in this case, what is happening? The Chief Minister, Mr. Arvind Kejriwal, is asking proof of residence. Proof of residence is being asked for the non-Delhi residents who are going to receive treatment in Delhi hospitals. So we must understand in this case what is happening. Lieutenant Governor strikes down Delhi order denying beds to non-residents. So this is misunderstanding is arising, but we must understand that under Article 21, right to healthcare is being guaranteed, which is very important to discuss. We must understand about this situation very importantly. When we say about that something is respect to the decisions which is being taken, we must say that it is very important to discuss what we say that Lieutenant Governor has guaranteed. While the first order directed local departments and agencies to not deny treatment to non-residents of the city, what we saw in the second order, the Lieutenant Governor directed the Delhi government to test asymptomatic, direct, and high risk contacts of confirmed cases as well. So, this is the case, but after that, the Lieutenant Governor has lifted down that order which denies treatment to non residents of Delhi. This is the case from the first article. Please note we are analyzing articles of 9th June 2020, the Indian Express Delhi edition. So this can be placed for General Studies paper 2 under health section. Second, we have this one very importantly. At a meeting with Human Resource Development, states flag digital divide in education. States flag a digital divide in education. Now, what is digital divide in education? It means it is highlighting the issue that in rural areas, especially the remote villages where the internet access is just 15% of the population has internet access, and in urban settlements what we have observed that internet access is much more. Digital divide between education, like this situation has arisen. What provision we have observed that online class or duration is capped at 3 hours, which is important to discuss, which is for relevant sections to discuss. That is which is highlighting the issue of digital divide in education very importantly. When we say about digital divide in education, it highlights the differences. What are the difficulties that arise for a student there? The meeting was held to discuss the standard operating procedures for reopening schools and for digital education. It was chaired by School Education Secretary Anita Karwal. Now, what issue it is placed, that is under General Studies paper 2, what can be asked at how can we solve the problem? The problem is that granting digital devices by the state governments, it can be a solution. But many problems are also arising out of the digital divide in education. When we say that there is a digital divide in education, there is a difference between the rural poor and the urban settlements students. Okay, many esteemed elite private schools are able to afford the digital education as well. But the government has imposed online education from March. But is it feasible? That is it reachable? Is it accessible for in each and every nook and corner of the country? No. The answer is no. We have seen cases like in Kerala, a girl committed suicide because lack of online education, lack of access to internet, and some students were found on the rooftop to access the internet network connection was so poor. As for Jammu and Kashmir now, yes, and also in Jammu and Kashmir, we have seen that it is only 3G connections, only 2G connections allowed, not 3G and 4G. This is the case what we have seen. So this is highlighting very important issue: digital divide in education. General Studies paper 2. A mains question can be expected from this article. So please, you have to read this article carefully. Importantly, when we say about, then you have why Delhi quakes aren't a signal. Why Delhi quakes aren't a signal. Now, this article is very important from disaster management point of view, General Studies, paper 3. This article highlights the issue that in the past 2 months, from April 1 to 31st May, we have observed 11 earthquakes, mild earthquakes below magnitude 4 in New Delhi. The national capital region has observed 11 earthquakes. But still, meteorologists and earthquake specialist scientists are confirming there is no conformity of any big earthquake which is going to occur in the near future, like anything big is going to occur. It is quite conforming. Very importantly, it is quite conforming that nothing big earthquake is occur, but it is possible. So evacuation plans it is highlighting. Then why it is saying? Because earthquakes below magnitude 4, it is our drawing our attention. But this article, how it is written for disaster management section, it highlights that what can be the plans of the state government, what can be the plans of the union government or the union territory to tackle the earthquakes with respect to their occurrences, and how can evacuation plans be shifted. Preventive measures awareness is the key, and also the same thing has been highlighted from this article, that the government has requested the citizens to be aware, because it's not possible, not feasible to evacuate the 1.2 crore citizens of Delhi. Next article, the healthcare gap, from editorial, very important. The General Studies, paper 2, very importantly to discuss. The healthcare gap, you can see the health section, General Studies, paper 2, it is being highlighted here. Like what is the healthcare gap which is existing, what we have observed in the day-to-day conditions, how high healthcare gap is existing. The rural people are not able to afford the costly. We have also seen some private hospitals charging 1 lakh to 1.5 lakh per day for the intensive care unit, ICU. So how we can resolve the healthcare gap? What is the problem? We have to look into this article. We have seen, as epidemiologists tend to consider, that the peak of the COVID-19 epidemic may not come before July. The question of the resilience of the Indian health system, which comes into play, which is very, very important to discuss, quite important to discuss, we may say about that a minute come before July. The question of the resilience of the Indian health system becomes more pressing, especially in cities like Mumbai, Delhi, and Ahmedabad. The limitations of the country's public health system are well known. India's people or public hospitals have only 7,13,986 beds. Statistics, the data are telling so less, we are not much prepared. According to a recent study by the Center for Disease Dynamics, Economics and Policy, India, and Princeton University, it has been released. Not only because the country has already registered 1,24,981 active cases, but also because these figures are a reflection of the lack of interest of the government of India for decades in developing a welfare state. The general perception behind the inadequate provision and availability of healthcare services is attributed to the country's developing nation status. However, India lags behind its BRICS peers on the Health and Quality Index (HAQ) index. As per the National Health Profile 2018, India's public health spending is less than 1% of the country's gross domestic product. The main issue is highlighted why the problems, the burden the healthcare industry, healthcare sector is facing. You have to understand that. Very importantly, so we have discussed up to some articles, that the scuffle between the Lieutenant Government and the Delhi government, misunderstanding, then digital divide in education, online classes duration to be capped at 3 hours, disaster management section, which was picked up from the explained section of the Indian Express, General Studies paper 3. And now we are discussing the fourth article, healthcare gap article, the healthcare gap. 3 more articles to go, we will discuss. But in this, what needs to be highlighted, what can be concluded, that we must understand solutions to curb this gap, to lessen this gap, to flatten the curve, and we must understand the role of civil society as well. Civil society has no role to play either. In fact, the situation would be much worse if non-government organizations and private foundations using corporate social responsibility money sometimes did not play such a huge part as a grassroots level. But the most effective interventions seem to take place when there is a high degree of coordination with the state apparatus. So, high degree of coordination is needed, is required in the state government and the other state government, also with the central government. Center-state relations needs to be maintained. It needs to be handled carefully, which needs to be highlighted from this article. And a good conclusion can be applied to testing. Testing is very important to cure coronavirus, and very importantly, contributory health scheme is important. Composition and tackling, how it could be made affordable. We can say that in case of Bihar, we have observed it has witnessed an almost complete withdrawal of the private health sector and has nearly twice the bed capacity of public facilities. In states where private hospitals have not opened their doors to the poor to enhance and supplement the government's efforts to ensure public health, the governments in question have taken control of some of them. As the Modi government has invoked the National Disaster Management Act (NDMA) of 2005, authorities are empowered to take over the management of private institutions. Very importantly, next article, Bracing for Change, Future of Healthcare, General Studies, Paper 2 now. This article is written by a doctor. It is highlighting what will the future of the healthcare sector. Now, in future, medical young graduates are being invited. What problems medical education, medical sector is going to face, that is being highlighted. So, what are those problems which the medical sector is going to face? We must understand such problems, or what are the challenges, how the poor are going to manage without, or any government insurance scheme is being provided or not. It is a big question. Rather than dumping them on government hospitals only, I feel that corporate entities should be compelled to take on their treatment. This is the statement of Mr. Dr. Shubha Shanmugam, who is the writer of this article. So, the role of corporate entities also comes into play. Very important, should be compelled to take on their treatment. They can make up for the loss by cross subsidizing treatments of patients with premium insurance policies, or when the patients themselves are very important persons, VIPs. India has emerged as a country that has tackled the COVID 19 pandemic with relatively less morbidity and mortality. And considering how the disease has changed opinions worldwide on China's role, it may be an opportunity to concentrate on medical tourism and focus on encouraging foreign students to come to India for education. Very importantly, to come to India for education, we say come to India for medical education. We must understand how we can promote medical tourism as well. China's role comes into play. So, a detailed interministerial standard operating procedure needs to be guideline to be released. Very importantly, okay. So, we must understand that India has emerged as a country that has tackled the COVID 19 pandemic with relatively less morbidity and mortality. We must understand medical tourism and focus on encouraging foreign students to come to India for education in general and medical education in particular. A detailed interministerial standard operating procedure is the need of the hour while dealing with such medical tourism. It will help bring in resources for the poor countrymen so that we can treat them better. And robust healthcare ecosystem needs to be developed. Okay, this is the case, and we must understand that health is becoming a commodity, but health was never sold as a commodity in our ancient tradition, and therefore it was never sold as a commodity in our ancient tradition, and therefore market forces, okay, can't be the nucleus of the health sector, at least in this part of the world. Let us understand this and try to Indianize the modern health system in a way that is aligned with our needs and culture. This is the crux of the article, Bracing for Change, Future of Healthcare Sector or Medical Education in India after the post-pandemic world, what will India will observe, relevant for General Studies Paper 2 Health section. Then we have the article from General Studies Paper 2 International Relations, okay. Words of Mr. Rajnath Singh, who is the Union Home Minister, Union Defense Minister. Okay. Okay, yeah. So you want a boundary dispute with China resolved as soon as possible. Now this is the highlighting the India-China scuffle. So till now we have discussing the Bracing for Change article, and the main crux of this article is to develop peace and tranquility among the borders. How we can develop peace and tranquility among the borders, which is very important to discuss. We say about discussing peace and tranquility among orders is quite important to discuss. When we say about discussing peace and tranquility, which comes into play, is very important. So we must understand the discussion as well, because something which is related to the discussion with respect to peace and tranquility, how we can develop between the nations as well. When we discuss about peace and tranquility, we must understand the situation, how we can develop between the two nations. So what we have observed, addressing a Maharashtra Jan Samvad virtual rally on Monday, Singh also slammed the Congress for targeting the government on border issue and said he would make a statement in parliament and not listen to the people. This is the case. So how we can just summarize this article, we must understand the case with respect to the international relations, how it is relevant. We must understand that you must understand the behavior of China as well. We know well in Wuhan and Mahabalipuram in 2019, Mr. Narendra Modi held an informal summit with their leaders, the country leaders. The Indian government's statement on the joint secretary level video conferencing on June 5, 2020 also underlined that the two sides should handle their differences through peaceful discussion, bearing in mind the importance of respecting each other's sensitivities, concerns, and aspirations, and not allow them to become disputes. A consensus forged in Astana in June 2017 and emphasized in Xiamen in September that year after the Doklam crisis, very important Doklam crisis, was resolved. Now, Beijing's comments also came. Beijing's comments on the border talks came a day after New Delhi signaled it was prepared for the long haul, saying that the two sides will continue the military and diplomatic engagements to resolve the situation and to ensure peace and tranquility in the border areas. And this was the case. So till now we have discussed 6 articles, and one thing I want to highlight that with respect to the disaster management, what article we discussed previously. Just I am going to that section. Yeah, with respect to this article, I want to tell the concept of foreshocks. Before earthquakes, many mild earthquakes occur, which are indications of future earthquakes. They're called foreshocks. So we must understand that with relevance. What is the relevance? Very importantly, we must understand the context of foreshocks. It is a warning for any earthquake to occur. So the concerned students must take all the precautions. And India China relations article. So this is the line of actual control standoff. We have discussed. I think we must be aware about the Pangong Lake in Ladakh in Jammu and Kashmir. Moving on to the last article, the 7th article, which is important from Indian polity and governance point of view, General Studies paper 2. After Governor Nod, Gairsen is now Uttarakhand's summer capital. So this article is important not just from prelims point of view, also from mains point of view. Under what provisions article or summer capital can be changed or be shifted to another city within a state? You must understand Article 3 of the Indian Constitution. One thing I want to highlight about Rishikesh Karnaprayag railway project, which is being developed in this Gairsen area. Gairsen system is very important to discuss. Rishikesh Karnaprayag railway project, so that the Gairsen can be connected with the rail network. What we know about that only Parliament can take final decision on location of state's capital or state's summer capital. A state legislature cannot even change the name of the state as per clause E of Article 3 of the Constitution. It is within the exclusive domain of Parliament. We must understand it is within the exclusive domain. It is within the exclusive domain of Parliament to form any state that set boundaries and name a state in the Union as defined in Article 1 of the Constitution. This is the case. So these were all the 7 articles from today's of 9th June 2020, the Indian Express Delhi edition, relevant for UPSC Civil Services Examination prelims as well as mains under various sections, General Studies paper 1, 2, 3 or 4 as applicable. So we discussed the articles. We can just have a brief look on the articles what we discussed today. This was the article discussing now the change in summer capital. We know about how as per clause 3 E of the Article 3 of the Constitution, it is within the exclusive domain of the Parliament to form any state or change the state summer capital or any capital. Okay. Then previously we were discussing about the India China relations, international relations, line of actual control standoff. Yeah, this is important from General Studies paper 2, international relations. This article, future of healthcare, General Studies paper 2, bracing for change. The healthcare gap, which is awakening, which is present, which exists between the rural poor and the urban settlement. Delhi earthquakes, disaster management. Yeah, very importantly, digital divide in education. Okay. So this was all about today's articles. I think you must have gained knowledge listening to these articles. Thank you. That's all from my side. Thank you.